What's up, guys? We are back with another review, but today we're taking a look at an entirely new license for McFarlane toys. We're taking a look at the DC Multiverse Superman, the comic Superman figure today. So of course, I'm not big into DC stuff. I rarely have done any DC reviews, but I couldn't stay away from this just out of sheer curiosity. I had to know for myself how these figures are, and Superman seemed like the one to go for, at least as far as the more standard characters go. So as far as packaging goes, these guys come in relatively large boxes. This thing is probably bigger than it seems. It's bigger than Marvel Legends packaging, for example. There's a lot of empty space in here, but that could just be because they've got bigger figures planned to cram into this box. So we've got Superman here in the big window. It's very clean. Presentation is really nice here. You've got a big comic panel background with a ton of artwork behind him. Got the DC logo down there on the bottom. Superman name and comic that he comes from on the side, Action Comics 1000, and then the back of the package has the cover for Action Comics 1000 alongside a lineup of comic artwork for the other figures in this first wave. So let's do it. Let's pull them out and take a look. And here he is out of the package, our McFarlane Superman figure. So this is a version of Superman that really I'm not familiar with. Action Comics 1000. It's very specific in its interpretation, so I don't really know the look. And again, I'm not a big DC guy, so this figure is purely a curiosity thing for me. I'm going to do the one comparison that I can to the NECA because it's the 7-inch scale that would kind of fit with him as far as most recent comparisons. And then we'll also show off some comparisons to other lines as far as how this line's going to scale, because that's obviously been a huge concern for a lot of folks since we knew these were coming out, is that are they too big or not? So we're going to find that out as well. But let's take a look at how he moves around to begin with, because there is definitely some interesting / weird stuff going on here as far as his just general makeup. So you've got a ball peg that goes into the head, but there is some serious like rubber banding going on here. He cannot look straight up. As soon as I put his head up, it goes right back down. As soon as I put his head down, it goes right back up a little bit. So flight poses are proving to be a little bit problematic in terms of how his head is positioned. You've got a pretty good tilt on his head though, actually really good. And then you've got full rotation there, but you can almost feel how rubbery the ball peg is. It wants to snap back into place almost. The arms go pretty far out at the shoulder. There is a ratchet joint in there. You do have a butterfly joint, but it really doesn't do a great deal because the torso piece actually comes out over the shoulder. So this pec is extended over where the shoulder would be, so he hits it right away. So that's kind of weird. You've of course got full rotation in there as well. You got a bicep swivel. Single jointed elbows. This is something that I thought was going to happen based on those original promo shots. Single jointed elbows on a large male figure seem to be incredibly weird because the Batman figure has double jointed elbows, so I'm not sure why they do not have at least the same articulation scheme. That's definitely a negative, but he does get 90 degrees, so you're just not going to get too crazy there. You've got the ball hinges at the wrist, so this is like the same kind of stuff they do for their Fortnite line. So you've got a hinge, and then you've got rotation, ball peg. So pretty good range of motion there. If you're like me, I'm not a big fan of ball hinges just because you do have to play with them a little bit more, but they do afford more mobility. He's got a diaphragm cut, so he goes side to side pretty well. He does not go forward or backward too well. It's decent. He does lean a little bit, but at the same time, the cape adds a lot of weight to his back, and it wants to pull him backwards quite a bit. You've got a ball peg at the waist, and he will twist in there, and then he does go side to side, backwards and forwards only a little bit. So as far as crunching forward, that's really all you're going to get out of him. And he wants to push back a little bit because of that cape as well. Legs go out at the crotch. Pretty good. Not full splits, but that's probably enough, right? They go forward without twisting the leg. They go forward that far. If you twist them, you can get them 90 degrees, but he looks kind of janky that way. Then they go backwards only a little bit. You can cut in there at the thigh. You can twist it a little bit, but it's not like a full thigh cut or anything. He's got double jointed knees, but the kneecaps on these figures, or this one in particular, are really weird looking. That's humongous. And then there is no boot cut on this guy because he's got a jagged cut for his boot. They didn't sculpt one in there, but he does have full ankle rotation because they've got ball hinges. So full rotation, then he goes backwards pretty far, he goes forwards pretty far, and then there is rocker, and he's also got toe articulation as well. So you've got pretty good mobility as far as the ankles go, but he doesn't have maybe as much movement potential as I was hoping for. He does seem to be a little limited in far more ways than I expected, just based on comparing him to, say, Marvel Legends. Now, as far as the aesthetics on this figure go, I think for the most part, based on the reference material that we've gotten, so of course, the image that was on the back of the box, that particular cover art for Action Comics 1000, I think they did a pretty good job here. This isn't exactly a iteration of Superman that I have a great deal of experience with, but Superman is Superman, so you kind of get a Superman vibe out of this, and he very much looks like one. I don't have too many negatives to say about how he looks, really, though. I think for the most part, they got him down good. I like the very matte finish on this figure. I think it works really well. I'm a big fan of that in general when toy companies can provide that. The big bright spot for me on this figure is 100% the S emblem on his chest. It's big, it's sculpted on the chest, it's not just painted, and the paint they did use is very metallic, very deep red. It really pops against the blue, and then that yellow on the inside pops against the rest of the figure, and it just looks really good. It's kind of like a beacon, draws your attention, and it works really well. There's not, outside of that, however, a great deal of paint on the figure. The rest of him is molded for the most part, except for, say, the neck area, the exposed skin, and then you've got the little bit of yellow on the belt. It's okay. It's a little thin in places. You can kind of see the red peeking through. The sculpt, in a general sense, I think is pretty good. Superman looks very Superman-esque from the waist up. If I do have one criticism on this figure for how he is built, so to speak, is that his legs, his thighs in particular, look really, really small in comparison to the rest of the body. They don't look long or too short. They don't look bulky enough. Superman should have some massive thighs to kind of exhibit his power. That very much draws your attention to how beefy and bulky he actually is, and I just don't think it really comes through here. He very much looks like he kind of has a chicken leg thing going on. The cape is another pretty decent spot on this figure as well. It does, however, like I said, it does add some weight to him, so he does kind of lean backwards a little bit. You will have to account for that in your posing, but I think the general sculpt, how it sits on his shoulders and exposing his neck and the back of his neck, I think it works really well. It's a decent design as far as how they wanted to make it flowing, a little more dynamic. Obviously, if you're not a big fan of plastic capes, you're probably not going to be happy with this one, but I think from a visual perspective, I think it looks good. It very much gives him a little bit of sense of dynamic movement, like he's in flight or he's in play in some way. So it looks pretty good, and I'm usually not too negative when it comes to plastic capes, and I think this one looks pretty good, despite the fact that it does kind of kick him backwards. The head on this figure, though, is probably one of the better elements in general, just from a sculpt and paint perspective. I really have no problems with it. I think it is sized appropriately. I think it is painted really well, and it just looks like the source material. It's not, again, it's not a Superman that I'm super familiar with, but there's no doubt about it. This is Superman. This is Clark Kent. Everything is crisp and clean. It's got more of that matte finish texture to it. The hair is really well done, really well sculpted, nice glossy sheen, and then the little curly Q that sticks down, of course, giving you that telltale Superman look, also sculpted really nicely. So it's not too crazy. It's a Superman plain male face, but it definitely looks like what they're going for here. Now, as far as accessories go, Superman usually doesn't have too many for your standard retail releases, and this guy is no different. But he does have one really weird one that's, I'm still not quite sure what they're going for here, but he does have something that I do like quite a bit. So Superman comes with a flight stand, and it's pretty good. It's actually modular, so it's not just a flight stand. So you've got a big arm here, and it'll clasp around his torso, but it's also got a peg, so you can use it as a regular stand, and it's emblazoned with the DC logo, and the arm just slides into this slot on the base, so you can use it as a regular stand or as a flight stand, which I think is just cool in a general sense from a utility standpoint. Also, one of the things that this line is including are these collector cards, so giving a very 90s feel for me when it comes to this kind of stuff. So you've got that artwork that we saw on the back of the box, and then you've got some stats and kind of a little bio for Superman here. This is incredibly well made, really nice cardstock. So I was expecting something maybe a little more flimsy, but this is pretty thick and actually really nice. I don't know if I need them, but it's cool to have something like that. He does have, as far as actual accessories go, he does come with a set of extra hands, so the bare minimum, I suppose. So you've got a left fist that you can swap out, so just a standard fist, but he has a right gripping hand. This is what I was saying when I said he had something weird. I don't even begin to know why he has this or what he would do with it, because Superman has no other accessories, so I mean, I could maybe put a little ice cream cone in his hand or something, but this is an oddity because, frankly, I don't ever see myself using this, and I would have much preferred it to be a second fist because, again, he doesn't have any other accessories to hold unless you want him to hold that card, I guess. Now, as far as size comparisons go, here he is with the only real Superman that I have to compare against, the NECA SDCC version, which is, of course, another 7-inch figure, so you can get an idea of what they scale like next to each other. I think that for the most part, there's not too much different in terms of overall size from the waist up, and they're very similar in height. The real difference for me is that the NECA one is a little bit bulkier from the waist down. As far as those thighs, like I mentioned, he definitely seems to have a little bit more just mass down there. And then as far as maybe something that you are more interested in is a Marvel Legends figure. So here's a Cyclops figure with his bands that continually fall down. So you can see that Superman here is about a head taller, which lines up with the fact that these guys are around 7-inch scale. So they're probably not going to be able to be worked into your normal 6-inch lineups or any kind of crossover event that you might be planning. And then here he is next to a Mythic Legions figure that, again, another 7-inch scale figure. So you can see that he is very much in line with this style of figure in terms of things that are not exactly normal, quote-unquote, 1/12 scale stuff. So overall, from someone who admittedly is not a DC guy, at least not really, this is an interesting and pretty decent first take at Superman. He is definitely far from perfect, do not get me wrong. Articulation is very rough in a few places, and I do think that he is too small from the waist down as far as bulk. The look, I think they got down really well. I like the finish. I love the S. I think the head is really well done. He has a very odd accessory set, and I do like the flight stand. I do think that the overall package is pretty well put together. That said, this is the only figure that I came home with after finding a handful of them. I left the cartoon figures because they look like absolute garbage, and the Harley Quinn figure is way too big, so I couldn't even bring myself to buy many more of these. I'm not going to get too far into this line, I'm sure, but I had to take a look. He's pretty decent. If you're a big DC fan, it's definitely worth checking out. If you're not so much into DC stuff, I'm not so sure that this is really the line you need to be jumping into. So that's going to do it for this look at the McFarlane DC Multiverse Superman. Let me know what you guys think. Feel free to like, comment, subscribe, and share, and until next time.